Pressure's not a thing for me. I don't, think of life that way in the situation that I'm in. And so, we keep chugging along, and there's going to be ups and downs, and it's not my job to care about what the outside, noise is and things like that. My job is to take care of everything in here and go out there and play.
How do you supplement improving your franchise quarterback, the #1 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, and Caleb Williams, by hiring the best offensive mind to be your head coach for the 2025 NFL season? And in this final season preview for the NFC North, we're going to be talking about the Chicago Bears and if they can finally compete in this 2025 NFL season. Last season, Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times, which led the league. The only quarterback that was close to being sacked that much last season was CJ Stroud, who was sacked 52 times. Caleb Williams being sacked 68 times was the third highest in NFL history for the most sacked quarterback in a season, only behind Randall Cunningham, who was sacked 72 times in 1986, and David Carr, who was sacked 76 times in 2002. With that type of information, you're probably like, dang, the Bears had to have for sure the worst offensive line in the league, but it's also twofold in that conversation in terms of being sacked the most, also at times on the quarterback, and we saw throughout frequent possessions in Caleb Williams' rookie season, for example, when he played against the Minnesota Vikings, and just throughout different games, he held on to the ball too long. Yes, there were problems in protection, and the Bears ranked 24th overall in the league in terms of total offensive line rankings. But it's no question that Caleb Williams has had to improve and really mature overall as a quarterback and in his decision making. And I think them hiring head coach Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions for the past few years, is going to help him improve his game, not only from a decision making standpoint, but really just elevating him to the type of quarterback that a lot of draft analysts and people who follow the game can see Caleb Williams to be as the potential answer to the Chicago Bears franchise quarterback solution that really hasn't been solved at a high level in its franchise history. That's honestly a crazy thing to say since the Bears were created in 1920, going down to its 106th season of the franchise, but they've never had a 4,000-yard passer still. Caleb Williams will be trying to eventually eclipse that. I know that's probably not the main focus for his sophomore season in 2025, and it really shouldn't be. The emphasis and goal for the Chicago Bears is to be the best football team possible, and I think that Ben Johnson being the head coach there is going to really help revitalize their culture, not only that, but their offense, their scheme, and just really the type of mentality that they have, because this team has just been in limbo for years. That though, a lot of people won't remember this because the Bears being tumultuous as a whole last year, as they had a 5-12 record, but not a lot of people remember that throughout the first 4 weeks of the season, the Bears had a 4-2 record. But after that Washington Commanders game, when Jaden Daniels won with that Hail Mary pass to Noah Brown, really just everything went to utter shite. Lost 10 of their 11 remaining games in that season after starting 4-2, which resulted in them only winning 5 games for the season. But with Ben Johnson now being the head coach, really trying to imprint his culture and develop the scheme and develop Caleb Williams in the offense overall and the team overall, I think that this team can lean more into what they had in that 4-2 area now with this rebuilt team that has added weapons for the offensive line and the defense and team overall. Something that overall bodes well for not only the Chicago Bears but Caleb Williams as a quarterback is that after being the 24th ranked offensive line in 2024, this season, according to PFF, the Bears have the 4th ranked offensive line going into this upcoming 2025 season, which is a beautiful thing. They traded for Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs, who has been one of the best guards in the NFL. They signed free agent center Drew Dalman, who's one of the best centers in the league. They have Jonah Jackson, Braxton Jones, Darnell White. That type of core right there can help shore up Caleb Williams in protection and pass pro and be complementary in a running game to just really improve this offensive line overall and this offense overall to thrive and supplement a team that ranked last in the NFL for total yards in the 2024 season, and they were ranked near the bottom in passing yards per game at 31st and rushing yards being a lower tier as well, ranking 25th. If you look at Ben Johnson's stats as an offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions in his 3 seasons in that role, he helped transform the culture and identity and be one of the most dynamic offenses that we've seen in the past half decade plus. As the OC there, the unit ranked top 5 for total offense and scoring every single season. And last year specifically, they led the league in points per game, averaging 33.2, and yards per game, averaging over 409.5. And they also set franchise record for total points and total yards, had multiple 40-point games, and produced the first NFL team with 4 1,000-yard skill position players, and helped lead the Detroit Lions to 2 back-to-back NFC North divisional titles in the 2023 and 2024 seasons respectively. Alongside of that, with that Lions team being 15-2 as he was the OC there, last year in 2024, they set franchise records for the Detroit Lions for total net yards, having nearly 7,000 net yards, scoring 564 points, and had 70 touchdowns in the 2024 season. And in 2024, he won the AP NFL Assistant Coach of the Year award. So it was inevitable that in 2025, he was going to end up being a head coach somewhere. Really, you can make the case that he should have been a head coach after the 2023 season, but he wanted to run things back one more time with the Detroit Lions in 2024 after that disappointing playoff loss to the 49ers where they blew a 24-7 lead. And they ended up having another disappointing playoff loss in 2024. There was a lot of circumstances to that. I think it's more so of the attrition of the defense that the Lions lost that playoff game. But now with Ben Johnson being the head coach of the Chicago Bears, he's talked about really trying to test the psyche and build Caleb Williams up to try to overall develop him to being the best possible quarterback that he can be. And I know the Bears had a bad season in 2024, and at times Caleb Williams definitely looked rocky. But if you look at it from a total statistical standpoint, it wasn't bad. Caleb Williams, he threw for over 3,500 passing yards, throwing for 20 touchdowns, and only having 6 interceptions. The problem with just looking at the stats, though, it really just doesn't tell the story in terms of really the type of missed opportunities and throws that he could have had, maybe from a protection standpoint, maybe from holding on to the ball too long, leading him to being the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last year. But there was certainly areas for him to build on that last year, and there's really going to be a great area for him to improve on that season last year, because if he's throwing 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and that's considered an underwhelming rookie year, imagine the type of great year that he can have elevating under Ben Johnson, whose system I think is going to be perfect in transforming Caleb Williams as a quarterback for that Chicago Bears franchise. It's really hard to diagnose Ben Johnson's scheme because it's as unique as it comes. It's very dynamic, very diverse, complex, physical, aggressive. I mean, every type of adjective that you can kind of describe an innovative offense in 2025 in NFL being, it is that under Ben Johnson. They have a lot of both zone runs and gap run schemes, having a lot of different formations and using a lot of 11 and 12 personnel, which you saw with a Sam Laporta tight end for the Detroit Lions. And now I think that you're going to see that at a high level with tight ends. The Bears already had Nicole Kmet, but they drafted in the first round, the 10th pick overall, Colston Loveland out of Michigan. They're going to utilize him a lot, and they love playing a lot of play action. You saw with Jared Goff and Ben Johnson's offense, a lot of stuff under center, not just being in a shotgun. And that's something that Ben Johnson wants Caleb Williams to continue to get used to, playing more under center so they can utilize the play action, because in 2024, the Bears ran almost 61% of their offensive snaps out of the shotgun, which ranks 16th in the league for most plays out of the shotgun formation. Being under the center, I think it's very beneficial, not only in the running game, but also to throw defenses off balance to try to diagnose what you're trying to run as an offense. And Ben Johnson is going to allow this offense to be very multiple. So I like that. But in terms of an offensive scheme perspective, let's talk about their personnel, because with having an improved offensive line this year, and even the type of weapons that the Bears had last year in 2024, but especially this year, they're devoid of excuses in terms of having success on that side of the football. It starts with the Chicago Bears wide receiver 1, DJ Moore, who I still believe is one of the most underrated receivers in the league. I think he's a top 15 receiver in the league around that area, and they traded for him after the 2022 season, and he's been dynamic in our offense, specifically his first year there in 2023. With the last year the Bears had Justin Fields. That season, DJ Moore had 96 receptions for almost 1,400 receiving yards, averaging 14.2 yards per reception and having 8 receiving touchdowns. And he was still dominant last year, but with an offense that was very stagnant at times and ranked amongst total offensive stats in the 2024 season, that was inevitable for DJ Moore's production to drop as the offense stagnated a lot. And last year he had more receptions than 98 receptions, but had less yards, 966 receiving yards, averaging basically 10 yards per reception and 6 receiving touchdowns. And that's with him playing all 17 games. DJ Moore hasn't missed a game since the 2020 season when he was with the Carolina Panthers. Throughout all the past 4 seasons since 2021, he's played every single game. So he's a definition of durable and consistent. But like I said, last year that offense was a lot to be desired. And not only with DJ Moore, they have rookie Rome Odunze, who they drafted the same year in the first round with Caleb Williams in 2024, who I think has a lot of untapped potential, and he was a victim of the stagnating offense that the Chicago Bears had in the 2024 season. After 2 amazing seasons at the University of Washington in 2022 and 2023 for Rome Odunze, in 2023 specifically having 92 receptions for 1,640 receiving yards, 13 receiving touchdowns, averaging essentially 18 yards per reception. Rome Odunze was drafted 9th overall in the 2024 NFL draft to pair with a Caleb Williams, who was drafted 1st overall in the draft. And last year, like I said, he was a victim of that stagnating Chicago Bears offense, because after having a combined yards of nearly 2,800 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns combined in the 2022 and 2023 seasons, Rome Odunze only had 54 receptions for 734 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. And that's not necessarily the worst in terms of a rookie production, especially the offense that he was in, alongside of receivers like I mentioned DJ Moore, but even Keenan Allen, who they had a short stint with last season, as he's now back with the Los Angeles Chargers, where he started his career at, where he spent his first 11 seasons with. Odunze, I felt like should have been utilized a lot more, and I believe that he will be in this Ben Johnson offense. I can kind of compare him right now to being the equivalent to what Jameson Williams for the Lions offense under Ben Johnson in 2020 2024, even though Rome Odunze is a little bit different of a receiver, as Odunze usually is utilized as an X receiver at that 6'3" frame, and Jameson Williams is known for being an electric deep target threat and wins in his routes a lot. Odunze, who can do that as well to an extent. Odunze is more so known for being a contested catcher, having elite ball skills and tracking the football, and having solid route running. I think that being the wide receiver 2 for this offense in his second year, Odunze alongside of Caleb Williams can elevate a lot in his sophomore year to really improve this offense, which in my opinion can only go up. In combination with that, as I previously stated, they drafted Colston Loveland with the 10th pick of this year's 2025 NFL draft. I'm not gonna lie, and I stand on this, I still believe that Tyler Warren was the best tight end prospect in this draft this year, but Colston Loveland was a tight end that the Bears wanted and Ben Johnson wants in his scheme, so I think it's valid to trust his vision in terms of how he wants Loveland to be utilized. His stats don't necessarily pop off the chart the past couple of years. In 2023, he had 45 receptions for 649 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns, and in that season, Michigan won the national championship. And last year, he had 56 receptions for 582 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. But I believe that him as a pass blocker and also being utilized in the running game at the tight end position, and to be a pass catching tight end too in that Ben Johnson system, it's just going to help him, but also complement a tight end in Cole Kmet, who they've had for 5 seasons now, as Kmet's going into his 6th year. Having that 2 tight end type of duo with Kmet and Loveland, that's just going to provide not only extra weapons for a Caleb Williams, but extra protection as well too, utilizing 11 and 12 personnel. Even DeAndre Swift as well, who's one of the more solid running backs in the league, 2 being another weapon there. Amongst all of those weapons there, their last and final offensive threat that I want to talk about, who I believe can end up being one of the best receivers from this 2025 NFL draft, is a receiver that they drafted in the 2nd round, the 39th pick overall in the 2025 NFL draft, and Luther Burden, the 3rd wide receiver out of Missouri. And he had a dynamic 2023 season. After that year, he looked to potentially be slated as a top receiver for the potential 2025 NFL draft, but a lot played into him not being drafted in the 1st round, whether it was some people questioning his attitude, stuff like that, maybe a little bit less drop off of production, but I think that's really credited to the inconsistent quarterback play at Missouri last year. I think Burden falling to the Chicago Bears is just going to be another great weapon that can be used at a high level in this offense, and I kind of comped Rome Odunze to being potentially the wide receiver 2, equivalent to what Jameson Williams was for the Lions, and maybe from a skill set perspective, Luther Burden more so resembles what Jameson Williams did for the Lions offense, as Luther Burden is used a lot at that slot receiver position. That 2023 season that was so dynamic for Burden, which had a lot of people thinking that he was the top wide receiver in the country, rightfully so, was amazing. He had 86 receptions for 1,212 receiving yards, averaging 14 point yards per reception and 9 receiving touchdowns. But last year, yeah, the production did drop off a little bit. Played 1 less game as well too, having 61 receptions for 676 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns, averaging 11 yards per reception. That, and like I said, some people questioning his attitude at time and passion, led him slipping to the 2nd round, but that's going to be a perfect thing for the Bears, as they're going to be able to continue to get him right. And I think that Ben Johnson is the best possible coach for Burden to go into his rookie year and be under an offensive system that can be overall transformed and hauled in a positive way. Using that as examples from the offensive line being improved, the extra weapons added to this offense, Ben Johnson being not only the head coach, but now he'll be the play caller too as well in Chicago, which we all should have expected, of course. When you have one of the best offenses in the NFL as an offensive coordinator, when you become a head coach, I think it's inevitable that you're gonna still want to call plays. I think all of those reasons are for sure valid expectations for the Bears to have not only no excuses, but to be ready to compete in this 2025 NFL season, because they're a team that's able to do that offensively but defensively too in addition. Before we get further into that for the Chicago Bears, answering the question if they can finally compete in this upcoming 2025 NFL season, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram / Twitter and X at Swaggy Russ and TikTok at Swaggy Russ 2 for shorts, reels, content, all things to that nature. This is the final video in the NFC North, and then lastly, after this video, we'll be moving into our final division for this NFL season preview series. As I said throughout previous videos, I've loved making every single season preview that I've had for every team in the NFL so far, and we are a few days away from this NFL season starting. Let's go. We are lit. I'm excited, and it's gonna be a good one. But with all that being said, let's talk about if the Chicago Bears can finally compete in this 2025 NFL season. So throughout the entire intro, I really just mostly talked about the offense, which rightfully so. Like I said, they have an offensive minded head coach now running the team, but you can't just win in the league only having a dynamic offense and being
shite.
on defense. And I think that this Bears defense is going to look a little bit different, of course, with Ben Johnson as head coach. And now they have Dennis Allen, former Saints head coach, as the defensive coordinator, after previously having Matt Eberflus as the head coach, who was a defensive-minded head coach. But I just think that Dennis Allen being the DC for this Bears defense is going to be a great thing for them as well, too. So before looking at the stats specifically that the Bears have had throughout the past few seasons, being one of the more respectable and better defenses in the league, let's look at Dennis Allen's stats as a defensive coordinator when he was with the Saints before becoming their head coach. And I guess we could maybe look at the stats of the Saints defense while he was head coach too, but I think it's very important to look at his stats as a defensive coordinator more so, because as the DC, you don't have as much responsibility as being the head coach, having to account for so many things. But with that being said, though, in 2021 specifically, as the Saints defensive coordinator before he became the head coach of New Orleans, Dennis Allen led the Saints to being the #1 defense in opponent red zone touchdown percentage with 43.5%. The Saints ranked #2 in total defense and opponent first downs, ranked #2 in pass defense. They were tied for 5th in sacks with 48, and they ranked 9th in scoring defense, allowing 20.3 points per game. Now it's his last full season as a defensive coordinator. So now with him being the DC for the Chicago Bears in 2025, I think that's a perfect storm. Last year, in Matt Eberflus's final tenure as a Chicago Bears head coach, being a defensive mind that he is, the defense slipped, ranking 27th in total yards allowed and 30th in yards per play in the league. They also finished last in the league for yards per passing allowed and were 29th in yards per carry allowed. But in 2023, they were one of the better defenses. I think just last year, a lot of things collapsed after that Washington Commanders game. I mean, it's just crazy how it was a crescendo of after that Hail Mary happened, but I think that was the downfall of the Chicago Bears team last year, and for Matt Eberflus being the head coach in Chicago. But in 2023, though, the Chicago Bears had the #1 rushing defense in the NFL. They allowed the fewest rushing yards and touchdowns and ranked 12th in total defense. I mean, that's a huge drop off, going from the 12th total defense in 2023 to the 27th defense the year following. That's atrocious. And with Dennis Allen being the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears in this 2025 season, they're going to want to look to replicate not only what they did in 2023 under Matt Eberflus as head coach, but really improve that defensive scheme to helping the Bears be overall one of the best teams not only in the NFC but in the NFL. From a depth chart perspective and personnel wise, they certainly have the talent to recreate that type of success defensively to be better and dominant. They have Montez Sweat, who had 6 sacks last year, Grady Jarrett, who they signed from the Atlanta Falcons, Javon Dexter Sr., Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Jalen Johnson, who I believe is one of the best corners in the league, and I think at times even goes underrated, has had 6 interceptions in the past 2 seasons and 89 tackles the past couple of years as well too. You have Jaquan Brisker at safety, Kevin Byard, Tyreek Stevenson, and Kyler Gordon. I think this defense can be one that really holds things down and improves from being the 27th ranked defense in the 2024 season for sure. It really just comes down to them understanding and implementing the scheme at a high level to really throw off opposing offensive schemes, to be diverse, multiple in disguise and coverage, and thrive in simulated pressure. As Dennis Allen utilizes a 4-3 base that shows a lot of man-to-man coverage, that tries to bracket receivers and really emphasizes those safeties. So I think that could be a positive to this Bears team overall defensively and as a unit as a whole. The Chicago Bears will also, though, be tested throughout the entire year, as they have the 2nd toughest schedule in the league, following the New York Giants, who have the hardest schedule in the 2024 season, who have the hardest schedule in the 2025 NFL season, as they'll be facing 8 opponents who made the playoffs in the 2024 NFL season. And it starts off at home on Monday Night Football in week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings, who are facing 8 opponents who made the playoffs in the 2024 NFL season, including 3 in their division with the Lions, Vikings, and Packers. And it starts off with a test in week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings at home on Monday Night Football. That's going to be a measuring stick type of game to see Ben Johnson as a head coach of the Chicago Bears, and how Caleb Williams plays against a top 5 level defense from the 2024 season that the Minnesota Vikings were. And then after that, in week 2, they play on the road in Detroit against the Detroit Lions, where Ben Johnson will be facing his former squad that he was an offensive coordinator with for 3 seasons and was on staff for. That's going to be intriguing. That's going to be an intriguing watch from not only a reunion standpoint, but just to see how the Bears play against one of the best teams in the league in the Detroit Lions. But I will say the Bears did play against the Lions well on Thanksgiving, despite having that absolute cluster of time management at the end of the game on Thanksgiving. But those are 2 early tests for the Bears to see where they are in their division, and can be pivotal to the season in the long term if they drop both of those games. But let's then run through the rest of the schedule. In week 3, they play at home against the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Cowboys will be improved despite trading Micah Parsons. I know y'all like, what are y'all talking about? You're dumb. They traded Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers in the division, which actually sucks for the Bears. I think it's going to be fine, and I think that a lot of people are overreacting to a lot of stuff on paper. Not saying that Micah Parsons isn't a great player, but because I shared my thoughts about what I think it means for the Green Bay Packers earlier. Go check out that season preview if you haven't already, that I posted a couple of days ago. But I think, just not going on a tangent about the Cowboys real quick, that they'll still be a really good football team and be in the playoffs. But that'll be a tough game as well too. So playing the Vikings, the Lions, the Cowboys in the first 3 weeks, I think it would be positive if they're 1-2. Is for sure if they're 2-1, and if they're 3-0, then I think that we could be seeing the Bears go on a potential playoff run. But even if they're 1-2 after those 3 games, if they're 0-3, then that'll suck for sure. But if they're 1-2, then that'll be a positive outlook for them, most definitely. But then in week 4, they play against the Las Vegas Raiders on the road, and then week 5, they have their bye week. All of these NFC North teams have early bye weeks, and I don't think that's a great thing necessarily in terms of long-term attrition throughout the season, but nevertheless, they were handed for the 2025 season, and after their bye week in week 5, they'll be playing against the Washington Commanders on the road again, and that'll be also another game on Monday Night Football. The NFL really messy for scheduling that game on the road like they did last year when the Bears lost in that dramatic fashion on the Hail Mary. So that's what that is though, but the Bears will want to win that game. It's really, they had that game won until that Hail Mary happened. But moving forward from that, they have the Saints in week 7, a tough Baltimore Ravens team on the road in week 8, then in the following week in week 9 playing against the Bengals on the road, week 10 playing against the New York Giants at home, week 11 playing the Minnesota Vikings away. Then they'll face the Pittsburgh Steelers at home in week 12, going on the road in week 13 against the defending Super Bowl champions and the Philadelphia Eagles, week 14 playing against their rival, or I don't even know if you want to say rival, because technically Green Bay has owned the series throughout both franchises playing in its history. But they play the Packers in week 14 on the road, the Browns week 15 at home, and then for a second time in 3 weeks, the Bears will be facing the Green Bay Packers in week 16 at home. And then for the final 2 games of the season, they play the 49ers on the road. And then in week 18, they play against the Detroit Lions at home. Looking at that schedule, I have the Bears winning 8 games next year. And I think that's around where they'll be. I mean, they won 5 games last year. In 2023, they won 7 games. Considering where they were last year, I believe 8-9 will be an improved season for them. But with Ben Johnson being the head coach, though, I really don't want to necessarily put a ceiling on it, because I actually wouldn't be surprised if the Bears were a wild card team, because like I said, when you have that type of offensive mind being the head coach of your team, you're going to be improved in some capacity for sure. And I know a lot of times throughout previous history hasn't worked out for these type of offensive guru of young dynamic offensive minded head coaches working out being head coaches after being great coordinators. But I think for Ben Johnson it's different, because you can tell with the sternness and attitude that he has. He's a no nonsense type of coach that's going to demand the best from his players, and especially a Caleb Williams, who has really been, I don't want to say pampered throughout his career, but I'd say probably given more freedom to do what he wants to. Ben Johnson is going to demand that Williams does things Ben Johnson's way and his overall philosophy. And I think that's going to help Caleb not only from a developmental standpoint as a quarterback, but as a leader, and also as a quarterback to be the best possible player that he can be, maximizing his talent and potential overall to help the Bears flourish and be a competitive team, one that hasn't not only reached the Super Bowl since losing Super Bowl 41 against the Indianapolis Colts back in the 2006-07 season, but a team that hasn't won a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 20, and that hasn't been in the playoffs since the 2020 NFL season. So with the Chicago Bears, do I think that they'll be competitive and compete this season? Yes, absolutely. But I believe that they'll be 8-9 or 9-8, and that's respectable. I think that's progress. I think that, like I talked about in multiple season preview videos and videos that I've made, success isn't always linear, but when it is, it's a beautiful thing, and I think that it can be for Ben Johnson as a head coach of the Chicago Bears, and who knows, he could have a season like a Jim Harbaugh, really revitalizing the Bears like Jim Harbaugh did with the Chargers, because the Chargers, for example, in 2023, they were 5-12, similarly to what the Bears were last year, and then in 2024 with Jim Harbaugh as a head coach, they were 11-6. So if the Chicago Bears did something like that, Ben Johnson would be in the conversation for sure, or maybe even undoubtedly win Coach of the Year for the 2025 NFL season. So I just think that goes without saying, and I think that regardless of how the Bears do this year, they'll be improved, they'll be a more respected team, and I think that Caleb Williams will have a better season than he had in 2024, which actually wasn't as bad as most people make it seem. But with all that out the way though, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Do y'all think that the Chicago Bears will be competitive and compete in this 2025 NFL season? Do y'all view them similarly to me, as I think that they'll be improved, but just a little bit shy of making the playoffs, but have a great chance to in 2026? Or are you like, nah, AJ, I disagree. I think that the Chicago Bears can make the playoffs this year and be a wild card team and shock a lot of people? Or do you disagree with both of those sentiments and think that they'll be shite again in this 2025 NFL season? Y'all let me know in the comments down below. Final season preview for the NFC North, and now we'll be moving into our final division for this NFL season preview series. Going into the AFC North, we'll be talking about the Steelers, the Browns, the Bengals, and of course, the back-to-back divisional champions in the AFC North in the Baltimore Ravens. Looking forward to that division for sure, and looking forward to the Dallas Cowboys facing the Philadelphia Eagles on the road, with week 1 starting Thursday night, kicking off the 2025 NFL season. We're almost here. Yes, sir. Let's go. And we just came off of college football too as well. It's week 1 starting, so we're here, guys. We made it. The pinnacle of sports is starting now. No offense to MLB and baseball, but football is starting, and then next week the NBA will be starting. Personally, my favorite sport, so stay tuned for that for sure. But yeah, guys, we've made it, and the NFL season is about to be back. Let's go. Make sure that you guys hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter /X at SwaggyRuss, and TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for shorts, reels, content, and a lot of things like that too as well. I love you guys so much. Like I said, a lot more on the way, including the series, and after every single NFL week throughout this year, from week 1 all the way to after the Super Bowl on Tuesdays, we'll be having NFL weekly recaps, so stay tuned for that every Tuesday for sure. We'll be talking about every single game, the outlooks and recaps and things of that nature too, analyzing the stats and how the games went. It's going to be a beautiful time. I'm looking forward to the season, guys. So yeah, but with all that being said though, guys, I love you always. Make sure that you keep Jesus Christ at the center of your life. You have so much great purpose in you. Let your light shine always and be loving towards others. And yeah, y'all keep being blessed and legendary, and y'all have a good one. Peace.